Recently, I've had a certain craving, a craving that appears every so often when I'm reading different stories, because FYI, I know everybody knows I love romance stories, fantasy stories, stuff like that, but there is one series in particular that I always kind of gravitate back towards eventually, and that is horror exquisite series, or series affiliated with zombies. And recently I have been looking for series like that. I have dived down kind of like a little bit of a rabbit hole, kind of reading different manga, watching anime, and even webtoons, which is what this video is going to be about today, talking about a webtoon that I found that is zombie related. And because of this rabbit hole, I want to just kind of share it with all of you, kind of share a series I found and see if you guys might be interested in it, because I doubt I'm the only one getting a little bit more of a zombie craving recently, because there's been a lot of stuff that's been coming out recently that is zombie related. Like we got the Dying Light game, but also a series that's kind of making waves recently, a live action series called All of Us Are Dead. And that is actually a funny thing, because the series I'm going to be talking about is actually All of Us Are Dead, but it is the webtoon, the actual comic basically in question. Now, I personally have not seen the live action version, but I have heard from a lot of people that it is actually really good. It's 12 episodes, it has like an hour episodes, like each individual episode is like over an hour long or more, so it definitely has a lot of content for those that are interested, especially in like a zombie-like series. So because of that, you know, I'm definitely gonna have to take some time out of my day and watch that once I probably get done with this video. But for now, let's talk about the actual webtoon equivalent, All of Us Are Dead. So, as I've kind of already explained, it is a zombie series. So what separates this series a little bit differently than other zombie stories out there? Because as someone that has watched and read a lot of stories like this, I have seen a lot of series kind of do some good and some bad takes on how they can do their storytelling. And one of the biggest fundamental issues I think that any zombie story relatively has is that it typically likes to kind of navigate away from the main threat and just focus on human versus human conflict, which is definitely important, don't get me wrong, but I feel like a lot of times the reason why people get into zombie stories is the overall feeling of the outbreak of zombies overwhelming humanity, people having to figure out how to survive against the zombie onslaught, and it's just like you don't know what you can really do against it, and that's what I think drives many people to read these type of stories. And so obviously when the plot kind of goes off the rails and it dives into, let's say, content of like, oh, human versus human, even though it is relatively important, there is a good thing to have that content within a story. I feel like a lot of stories that have zombie content focus too heavily on that, which results in it just losing what it once had. So far from what I could see from All of Us Are Dead, it does not really have that conflict, and the reason why I say that is because everybody within the story has a sense of unity. And that is actually what is really interesting about this story, because typically from a zombie story that I read, you have it where the characters are just, you know, throwing each other under the bus to be able to save themselves. And obviously this element is definitely going to play a part in the story of All of Us Are Dead eventually. But at the very least, from the early stages, from the 20 plus chapters that I have read, it's clear as day that there is a sense of bond and community where people are willing to risk their lives and be selfless to save others. And you might call them a little bit stupid because they are throwing their life away, especially in a zombie apocalypse, but it does add a different realm of element to the story that you don't normally get. It's a breath of fresh air, not really seeing a lot of selfish characters that are actually willing to stick side by side each other and help each other, and I appreciate that. That reminds me a lot of the zombie movie I watched recently in the past year called Train to Busan. If you've ever actually seen that Korean movie, I really recommend it. It's a really good freaking zombie movie. And, you know, when I think about the themes of that movie and I think of All of Us Are Dead, I feel a very similar vibe, a sense of unity with people working side by side to be able to do what they need to do. And that's my overall impression I got with the first early chapters. So, just automatically, if you're someone that is turned away from people just being selfish and just not really wanting to work together, then, you know, obviously that's not going to be this series. This series actually has unity. It has unity. It has people working together. Now, let's actually talk about the plot, okay? So, when it comes to zombie stories as well, when they start off, there's typical, like, different formats that a writer can go down. You have it to where it's like many days or weeks or months pass after the outbreak, like someone is in the hospital, they wake up, and they realize the entire world is basically gone. And, like, it's not the same, there's zombies everywhere. This is a typical format that a lot of zombie stories like to follow. Another format is where, someone is just locked away, maybe in the boonies or whatever, and they have no idea what's really going on, but they finally decide to go outside or whatever, and they notice that the world is actually destroyed, unaware to them. Or they actually start in the middle of the story where, the zombie apocalypse is happening right then before their very eyes. There's different ways that this type of storytelling could take, and obviously it's option C. You have it to where the outbreak literally just starts within the story, and you have the characters reacting to it around them, and it's literally ground zero of the zombie apocalypse. Now, this is easily one of my favorite formats of stories, of zombie stories, because I like to see the people's general reaction of how it spreads, but also how things could have been done differently to stop the said spread. And I really love that. I really love that take. I love that type of storytelling, because to see mistakes that were made and how things could have potentially have been different, it leads to a lot of good discussion, theory crafting, etc. I've always loved that type of stuff. So since we know it's ground zero with the zombie outbreak, what is actually going on? So from my general understanding of the story that I've gotten after reading 20 plus chapters, is that you have it where this girl was basically bitten by a hamster. Basically, this hamster seems to have been affected by some form of aggressive disease, which, as we know, is the zombie disease. We don't know the exact name or what it's actually called within the series, but we can pretty much just say it's a zombie disease. And this girl gets infected by it, and the teacher that had these hamsters, for whatever reason, locks her up and keeps her locked up for 2 days. Obviously, from the outside perspective, a man doing something like that, that's like, whoa, what are you doing? It's like messed up, and it is messed up. And basically, as it goes on, he was only locking her up because he was afraid that, the zombie virus would spread, which kind of elaborates on the fact that, he knows something. He knows whatever is going on, but he's not really saying what is going on. And that is the general gist you get throughout reading the early chapters, is that what is he hiding? What has happened? Because the character in question that locked up the girl was a teacher, and this guy apparently was on leave for a while because his wife and child turned up missing. And you can only assume, thanks to what is happening within the story, that his wife and child most likely got infected by a zombie disease, which resulted in him probably having to, get rid of them. And obviously, you can't just explain something like that to anyone, like, oh, my wife and son, they became zombies. Obviously, I had to get rid of them. Like, you can't explain that. That's not something you could just explain, because you gotta look at this from a real-life perspective. Like, if a zombie disease legitimately happened in real world, okay, and your family or whoever close to you would turn into a zombie, and you had to do whatever to get rid of them, obviously, if you just tell some random person or anyone, they're gonna think that you're crazy. They're gonna think you're legitimately crazy, and they're not gonna believe a word you say. And so, things like the zombie apocalypse spreads thanks to that, because people don't want to believe it, because it just doesn't make sense. It sounds like, fiction, like, something that is just in a movie itself. So that is why things like that can usually spread. So, knowing that he probably wouldn't be believed no matter what he says, it's probably why he took it into his own hands to lock up the girl to make sure that she didn't spread the disease. Which leads into the big question that I have. She did not get infected quickly. So I want to point this out in terms of the timeline. We found out that she got bit. And then 2 days passed as she was locked up basically in like a dark closet. And then as she finally freed herself and found others, her overall zombie, virus spread rather quickly. She bit someone, she went like savage, and then others started to spread it very quickly. And if we look at the transmission between like the zombie, virus from others to others, like different individuals, it looks like it's very fast. It looks like it would only take maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes after you're bit to really start spreading the said virus. However, once again, I want to point out, the girl that kind of was patient 0, the one that got bit by the hamster, it took 2 days for her to really finally evolve into a zombie. So the question I wonder is if there is ways to actually stop the spread, or if it was because she was the first patient, that's why it took so long. However, one thing I do want to point out is if we look at the general environment and the symptoms that we've been seeing from the characters, is that the girl was locked in a dark closet. So maybe light sensitivity has something to do with the virus spreading very quickly, and since she left the closet and she was out in the open, she started feeling dizzy, etc., it resulted in the virus spreading very, very quickly. Or in this case, maybe the doctor has some form of cure he was cooking up to be able to actually help her out, because it was stated in the chapters that he was drawing her blood like 4 times a day, basically. So it does let us know that maybe he was testing and figuring out a way to actually help her, and he was on track of doing that. Or maybe you have to extract someone's blood enough to be able to help them out from the virus really taking a hold of their body. So yeah, there's a lot of questions, a lot of theories, and I do like this series for that, because one of my favorite things to do when it comes to these type of stories is speculate, how did it start? Where did the virus come from? Is it like made by a government? Is it, just a virus that eventually just appeared out of nowhere? Is it an ancient disease? Is it from aliens? It makes you wonder, and I love that type of stuff with storytelling, and that's why I've always loved zombie stories. So All of Us Are Dead as a story itself, it's really good. It has a really solid start. I think it's a solid zombie story, and I like I said, the sense of unity. It does not feel like something like, oh, here we go. It's just like they're gonna keep throwing each other under the bus and not really trying to work together. I like how the characters work together. That is one of my favorite elements of it so far. So I'm going to continue reading it, but I'm going to leave the video off here. Thank you so much for everyone that tuned in. If you are interested in reading All of Us Are Dead, I recommend you clicking the link down below, because it is a really good read so far, and it is a completed story. I do want to clarify, it is a completed story, so you can finish it in basically 1 day if you choose to. So that's a little FYI for all of you. But anyways, with all of that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. With that, be safe, stay healthy, Chibi out.